I want to do warm weather testing of the new Volvo EX90, Polestar 3, Porsche Macan, Audi A6 e-tron, etc. this winter when it's freezing cold in Europe. This means traveling to California where the weather is warm and I'll get access to these cars. But this trip is going to cost me close to 8,000 euros. Half of that is going to be covered by my sponsors, but have started a GoFundMe to raise the other half. So far, after a little more than a week, we've raised almost 10% of our goal. So if you want to help us to get to 100% and support this trip, there's a link down below. All contributions, small or big, help immensely. Thank you so much, guys, because it looks like we're going to California this winter. The Taycan Cross Turismo has been updated for 2024 with a bigger battery, more performance, and faster charging. In the last video, which was my range test, this new Taycan didn't impress me. Sure, it gets a little bit more range, but I was hoping for even more. But maybe in this test, where the great are separated from the good, this new Taycan can shine and perform as I hoped. Let's find out what's what, who's who, and how this test is going after about an hour on the road. I know, guys, there have been a lot of Porsches on the channel lately, but that is because I am now in the very fortunate position that I've started building a relationship with Porsche Norway and also Porsche in Stuttgart. I think Porsche are very particular with what journalists, what YouTubers, who they lend their cars to and who they invite to press drives and to events. But I have been very lucky to start building a relationship with Porsche because I love Porsche. For you guys who don't know, I actually daily a Taycan Cross Turismo that I've had for almost 3 years now, so I love the brand. So recently I've gotten to drive the new Macan rear wheel drive and 4S at the press launch in Germany. I was also invited to the Taycan 1111 kilometer challenge, an awesome race that is one of the craziest stuff I've ever done here on the channel. So I'm going to link that video in the description box down below, because if you like Porsches, if you like electric car challenges, I would highly recommend you guys to go check that video out, because that is one of the craziest things I've ever done here on the channel. So there are going to be more Porsches in the future. Hopefully I'm going to get my hands on a Macan press car in not too long here in Norway. But today it's all about this, the facelifted Taycan 4 Cross Turismo, which is one of my favorite cars. As I said, I daily one of these, the pre-facelifted models. It's the car I've owned for the longest period of time, the past 10 years, because I haven't found anything to replace it. Maybe a new one of these is the only replacement. But today we're gonna find out how many minutes this car spends charging to cover the long trip test, which is a route over 610 kilometers or 380 miles. So before I give you guys an update after about an hour on the road, I just want to give a huge thanks to today's video sponsor, which is Zaptec. The Zaptec GO is an awesome and sleek home charger, which is the home charger I use at my house. It's also an award-winning home charger, where it was best in test in the Norwegian Automobile Association's test of home chargers a few years ago. So if you want to support the channel, if you want one of the best home chargers, one of the coolest and sleekest home chargers, I would highly recommend you guys to check the link down below and purchase one from there. After about an hour on the road, our average consumption is just below 25 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, which isn't very low. I mean, the Taycan has never been an efficient vehicle, and the Cross Turismo even less efficient, but also today's conditions aren't great. Today, we have a cold day between 4 and 6 degrees Celsius today. And it started with dry roads, but mostly it's just been wet and damp. And now we have wet roads, and also on our way down to our turnaround point in Kristiansand, we have a headwind between 1 meter and 4 or 5 meters per second. That's just gonna get, more and more severe as we get closer and closer to our turnaround point. So it really is hard to predict how this is gonna go today, what our consumption is gonna be. But as we now start on the 2-lane section of this road, so the rest of the way down to our turnaround point after an hour, we're gonna have patches of 4-lane and 2-lane, so that means the average speed is gonna drop. So hopefully that means also the average consumption is gonna drop. As we made our way southward on the E18 main road, the consumption kept dropping and dropping as we got closer and closer to Kristiansand. But what I did not expect was the weather to suddenly turn and turn for the better. Out of nowhere, the skies cleared and the sun popped out. The temperature shot up to a very non-November 12 degrees. Yeah. The weather suddenly turned around and got a lot better. We actually had a little bit of sun, and also the temperatures have risen. It's currently 12 degrees Celsius. Yeah, I had no expectations of the temperatures getting any warmer. I'm like, yeah, it's gonna be a really cold day, but then suddenly weather got better. Now it's overcast, but 12 degrees Celsius. So we're here now at our turnaround point in Kristiansand, and our average consumption halfway is 22.8 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, which predicted, I said, was gonna drop. But it remains to be seen. Once we now start heading back towards Oslo, will that consumption keep dropping? Is the wind map correct? Will we now have a tailwind on our way back? And how far will we be able to go? So I put in the Ionity charging station in Dal as our destination, as our charging stop. And the car says we're gonna arrive there with 3% stated charge. So that may be a little bit tight. That may be a little bit cutting it short, but I still think we're gonna be able to make it. But the reason I'm a little bit concerned is that the bottom buffer in this new updated Taycan is basically zero. It's 0.2 kilowatt hours. Yeah, so when I went on my trip to Austria and Germany, I ran out of juice twice. A few weeks ago, I participated in the Taycan 1111 kilometer challenge, a race through Germany competing with other countries. And things didn't exactly go as I had hoped. It was a crazy day. So check that video out at the top of the description. Because the newest EVs can go further than ever and charge at insane speeds, there's no longer time for me to eat and go to the toilet when stopping to charge, which says a lot about how good EVs are getting. So halfway to the chargers in Brokelandsheia, I actually had to stop off camera to get something to eat and buy drinks. After chugging down 2 delicious Jägerpølser, I was ready to top up the Taycan 2. Last time we were here was with the Porsche Taycan 4S. And we had huge problems with the chargers, like changing chargers several times. And yeah, we had a real bad charging session here. There was some issue with the charging station. Though I actually called Ionity customer service afterwards and asked them if there were any problems with the chargers. And they said, no, there wasn't any problems with any of the chargers. So I don't know, we didn't get any peak speed. We were able to charge later because this car has an insane charging curve where it will actually like peak up until like 60% stated charge. So we were able to go a little bit further, empty the battery, and then do another charging session. So hopefully we're not gonna have any issues here. This car does have plug and charge activated, so I'm connected now, and we should be ramping up here in about a second. The record we set with that Taycan 4S, even though we had to charge higher up in the battery percentage, was at 5 minutes charging time for this insane charging time. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna time the charging session here. And there we go. Now the timer, it has started. We're now at 5% stated charge, and we're getting 87 kilowatts. That should hopefully ramp up quickly. 169, 228, 247. The car said 250, 260 now at this percentage with this battery temperature. I put the charger into the navigation system, so you know it should be a preconditioned battery. 285. This battery pack does peak at 320. I've seen that several times with both the, in here in Norway, and also when I went to Austria and Germany for the 1111 kilometer Taycan challenge. So what we started doing now after that Taycan 4S long trip test is that we now correct the charging time. So at the end of the video, we're gonna rank these cars as we always have according to the charging time. But what we're gonna do is that we're gonna subtract the percentage at the end, meaning that we're gonna arrive with essentially 0% stated charge. We may have to do like 1 or 2 with this car because of that very low bottom buffer. We'll talk about that at the end of the video, but that means we're going to correct it. We did that with the Taycan 4S. We did it with the Ford Explorer in the last video, and then we're going to do it with this car. So 297 is what I saw there, 296. So we're not getting 320. We're not getting 320. Maybe we'll get it a little bit later, but this charting curve of this car is insane. It peaks like at 300 kilowatts up to like 60% stated charge. And according to the car, we're gonna go now from, it says from 4 to 49. Then we'll ride with like 3% stated charge. I think we're gonna do that. And then again, we're gonna correct for that charging time at the end of the video. Welcome back to SO in Släpanden, where we started this long trip test earlier today in what seems like an eternity ago, but is actually less than 7 hours ago. We started 10 in the morning and now it's like 4:45. Maybe it feels so long time ago because it's already pitch black outside. Yeah. A few weeks ago, we switched over to winter time, and that means it's gonna get dark just earlier and earlier. And the upcoming months is just gonna get worse and worse and get colder and colder. Yeah, I'm really not a fan of winter here in Eastern Norway. Where I'm from in Western Norway, it gets dark like half an hour later, which really is a lot, especially at, you know, that peak winter solstice, and it doesn't really get anywhere close to as cold as here in Eastern Norway. But on the flip side, the summers here in Eastern Norway are so much better than in Western Norway. So I'm not complaining like half of the year. I don't know, maybe that's why I want to go to California and do summer weather testing now in winter to just escape the cold winters here just for a few weeks, But okay guys, I digress. So we arrived here with 3% state charge, and I'm gonna correct for the charging time once I reveal the actual charging time. And our average consumption, 22.4 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, which is a little bit higher than the sedan 4S we tested about a month ago under warmer conditions, but it's actually less than the Cross Turismo we tested 3 years ago under very similar conditions. I mean, the peak temperature today was a little bit higher than that day 3 years ago, but also throughout the day today, most of the time it was between 4 and 6 degrees Celsius. I mean, just like half an hour after we charged in Broknansheia, the temperatures just plummeted down to 4 or 5 degrees Celsius. So for the most of the day, it's been really cold. And also almost half of the trip on our way down to Kristiansand, we had really bad surfacing, like a lot of water. It was very wet. So I think the conditions, though not identical, very similar. So I think at lower speeds, like on this test in the long trip test, this car has become more efficient. So this facelifted Taycan for Cross Turismo charged for a total time of 9 minutes up to 50%. So if we subtract those 3% for correction, we're still at 9 minutes. The car spent 8 minutes up to 45%, but subtracting 3% from 50%, we're only at 47%. So 9 minutes. But as I've said throughout the video, we also have to correct for this car really not having a buffer below 0. I've experienced that a few times with this facelifted Taycan, that you really can't go down to 0 because you have no safety margin at all. So I think it's only fair to put an extra percent on top for it to be comparable with other cars. But we actually don't have to correct for that because at the beginning of the test today, I only charged to 99%. So we already started with that penalty. So it really doesn't change that charging time even when we correct for it. So we're still quite far off that 4S sedan I tested about a month ago, but still guys, it's so much better than the 24 minutes the pre-facelifted Taycan spent on that day 3 years ago. That's a huge improvement. And for it being cold, it being close to winter temperatures most of the day, I think that is actually pretty good, though it's not like in the top 2. It's like in the top 3 or top 4. So guys, let me know what you think about the results of the facelifted Taycan for Cross Turismo. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please drop me a thumbs up down below. And for more car content, as always, please subscribe. See you guys later and goodbye.